I wanted to do a Tom and Jerry meets Tekken kind of thing based in like where the insanity of anime and all this stuff sort of butt heads with the mundane reality of everyday life. That was very Stephen Chow. I love his kind of sense of humor, or James Gunn, where the ability to make humorous moments in maybe otherwise serious storytelling and things like that. So I thought that was really fun. So that was definitely the inspiration for Yuki versus Fan, just like anime craziness meets like mundane everyday life.
Welcome to another episode of the Creatives Corner Insights, where we explore the minds and creative journeys of artists, writers, innovators across creative industries. Today, I am thrilled to welcome Graham Misiurak, the founder of Dusk Leaf Media. Graham is a talented writer with a passion for crafting engaging stories in comic books, animated series, and even game design. I just found this out today. His portfolio includes standout projects like action-packed graphic novels, an animated series, Yuki vs. Panda, a dark, mysterious horror comic, Anubis Prophecy, and a humor-filled fantasy adventure, Duds and Dragons. On top of that, he's ventured into the world of tabletop games with fast-paced strategy game called Critter Force. Through Duskleaf Media, Graham combines his love for storytelling and collaborative creativity to bring unique and memorable worlds to life. Whether you're an inspiring writer, animation fan, or someone curious about the creative process behind these mediums, today's episode is packed with insight and inspiration, and you can check out Graham's work and learn more about him and Duskleaf Media at www.duskleaf.com. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. Welcome, Graham.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. How is everything? Because I know we met, not to put a huge date on this too much, but we met over at Fan Expo. How was Fan Expo for you?
It was a lot of fun. I had a great time. Met so many cool people, and I always have a good time at cons. Pretty much.
That's cool. Is that like your first time going to one, or?
No, it's my first time being a guest at Fan Expo, but I've been guest at other cons, and I've been to Fan Expo as like artist alley and stuff, and I've done other cons and stuff like that. But yeah, but it was a nice show. It was a perfect speed for me. Not too crazy, but nice and big and lively.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. I mean, how? I guess my question in terms of that, before we get into the inspiration for writing and all that, is as a guest, how do you get on to be a guest at these conventions? And a lot of people think that you may need like a complete social media following and all that. Like, what would you say is your best advice for that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think every like don't say no to anything if you really are serious about it,
Right.
and every little con, every little experience that you have is a little notch in your belt and will, sort of pads your resume with experience and things like that. So yeah, sure, you got to have like some kind of content to have a fandom somewhere. But I mean, I use social media sparingly, and I don't have a giant presence online or whatever like that. I just do my work and try really hard and try and get out there and yeah, meet as many people as I can.
Yeah, no, I can definitely agree with that. I think like meeting face to face is often like the best sort of networking.
For
Same
sure.
how we did. So when it comes to your creative journey, what would you say that inspired you to be a writer for comic books and animated series? And was there any particular defining moment? Because when I met you, I thought you were you did the art, but then you were telling me how you're the writer, and then you have somebody that does the art. For example, JC Grand did the art for Anubis. So
Mhm.
what would you say has become your inspiration for that kind of stuff?
My inspiration for like getting the different artists, I guess, or
I
just getting
guess
into the writing.
in yeah, like being a writer, like who are your biggest influences on that?
Oh, that's a giant question. I sort of Frankenstein all my inspirations and stuff. I don't try not to dissect too much because then you run the risk of like, I don't know, treading water that's already been done or copying or things like that. So, but as far as like just wanting to write and tell stories, I think I've always wanted to do that. I started writing comic books as a kid. And then I got into like filmmaking and television. Like in the middle of my career, I was like a director and doing that kind of stuff, and was still writing skits and everything like that. And then I went to film school, and so I was doing that kind of stuff. And a lot of the storyboarding, I'm sure you know, is basically like, which is the blueprint for a lot of filming and stuff like that. It's
Hmm.
basically comic book art. A lot of the time, it can be, these beautiful panels, and so I just started thinking while I was getting out of that industry that I could still tell stories visually by just going with the storyboard and just go using that medium. But I learned very quickly that it was a very different medium, comic book writing, than like film and video and stuff like that. There's similarities, but they're definitely different beasts altogether. So that was kind of interesting to to go from the comic to film, TV, back to comic again, and that's sort of where I've resonated now.
It's interesting you bring that up and being a start in film and then moving over to comic and even gaming to some extent. What would you say are some of what's different about the storyboard process and say like a film or TV series versus to the writing process?
Sure, yeah, definitely. Well, it's how you tell the story is very different. I learned, I kind of stumbled my way through a couple things, but how you would write an action sequence, for instance, or comedic action sequence for film would be very different than how you would do it for a still panel. In the comic books or still panel, you have to really convey as much as the story or the action as you can, like, and make it logical and things like that. In the editing room and in video, you have a little bit more, I think, depending on as long as you have enough footage, you have enough, sort of, you can sort of meld things together and you can tweak things and stuff like that. So, and different jokes land differently. The pacing of film and pacing of a comic book, how you read it, is just totally different. So you would have to totally kind of write those two action sequences, very emphasizing very different things, I think.
Mhm.
So yeah, that was kind of interesting.
Right, because I love how you brought up the fact that, like with editors, there is a little bit more of they're different there's different things that you have to think about in a more creative element. Like with an editor's job or a filmmaker's job, a lot of the times, you're creating the Foley sounds, if anything, but sometimes those sounds are provided. But when you're reading, say a graphic novel or comic book, half of the work is your imagination. You're
Yeah,
sitting here and you're kind of picturing what does this sound like,
yeah,
and the whole pacing of the jokes can change just off of, how fast the person decides to read the book and all that. So that's really kind of cool. Has any of these like crossed into the other mediums that you've done? Such, for example, you do have multiple projects that span different formats, like the
mhm,
comics, the animation, in the games. How would you say that the process of that is, has to be different? Because like you see TV shows and
mhm.
books that commonly get, created and say, "Hey, we referenced this book," but then they go a completely different trajectory.
Right.
Like with for you, do you keep this trajectory pretty much the same, or are you doing something entirely different with that?
That's interesting. So I think like film and even comic book writing, in my instance, anyways, it's a collaborative effort. So yeah, it really depends on who you're working with. You got to be on a project with people that sort of
Yeah.
get, yeah, what you're going for. Because I mean, I could write until I'm blue in the face, but it goes through that filter of the artist when they bring in their vision and stuff like that. And if that doesn't mesh well, then that could be a problem. And likewise, if an actor doesn't quite do, or a voice actor is not quite, as you imagine them, then you got some finessing to do and things like that. So it's a collaborative process, but how you kind of collaborate is a little different, I would say. Yeah, but
Right.
there's definitely some crossover. Like I did Yuki versus Panda started off as a live action thing where we had a girl in a uniform and a panda outfit, and they were just he was just trying to mess with her in everyday life and stuff like that. And then I carried that on into the comic book, and then we took the comic book and used that as the basis for the animated series. So that was kind of interesting. It came in. It's it's been in like three incarnations, and each one sort of had to work at different angles and sort of get the right people in the different mediums because they're so different. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that one I've only looked briefly into the Yuki and Panda.
Sure,
I
sure.
didn't have too much time to dive into it.
No worries.
It definitely looks like a pretty unique premise and type of things. I'm like, was
Yeah,
there
it's on
anything
YouTube.
Yeah, was there
Yeah,
anything
you
that
can check it
actually
out.
inspired this one? Because I think one thing I always find fascinating about a lot of these, stories is you always have like the main character, then you have the archetype or the side character, the sidekick that happens. So what kind
Yeah.
of promote or what kind of got you into doing something similar to this?
So just for Yuki versus Panda, I it was just my each of my projects is sort of like an avenue that I get to sort of pour my heart into the different things that I love, my horror, my action, and my the fantasy comedy and things like that. But yeah, so for Yuki versus Panda, it was an experience. For Anubis, sorry, can you refresh the question again? What was the I kind of lost my train of thought.
Question the question is, I guess, like, what kind of inspired the story into did it start
Right.
out as an animated series or did it start as
Yeah.
a
I wanted to do like a Tom and Jerry meets Tekken kind of thing based in like where the insanity of like anime and all this stuff sort of butt heads with the mundane reality of like everyday life. And I
Yeah.
thought that was kind of very Stephen Chow, kind of I love his kind of sense of humor where you can or James Gunn, where the ability to sort of like make humorous moments in maybe otherwise serious storytelling and things like that. So I thought that was really fun. So that was definitely the inspiration for Yuki versus Fan, just like anime craziness meets like mundane everyday life. And yeah, each one is a different kind of inspiration. The Duds and Dragons is my D&D, obviously, that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
I wanted to tell my own story, but something different. So I thought it'd be funny if like all the heroes have been taken and it's just all the duds that are left there that like all the sidekicks, as you say, have to be like kind of okay, I guess we have to like save the realm or something and that kind of
Yeah.
thing. And then Anubis Prophecy was again just my horror, my kind of goth. I was a goth kid and stuff like that. So I really like always was fascinated about ancient Egypt and gods and all these things. And I just thought it was really cool to kind of mesh all that stuff together. And yeah.
Yeah, definitely. How many novels or how many issues of the of each main series you have going on right now? Is it like what one's your
Yeah.
newest one as well?
Oh, I'm constantly working it. So Yuki versus Panda is going to have 20 in total, and that's going to be the full story arc. And 16 of them are out right now. So I'm working on 17 right now. It's written. We're just me and the
Mhm.
artist are just kind of going through it right now and getting those last three issues done, and then that'll be the full arc for that. Uh, Gods and Dragons, there's going to be 10, just straight up. That's my newest project. So I've had the best experience, sort of, or the most experience, sort of breaking up my projects, and so I think I finally got the art of, how to the
Mhm.
pacing. I think a little bit better finally. So just I can straight up just do 10, and I feel like that'll be a perfect amount to tell a story. And then Anubis was originally kind of a graphic novel, but I've been breaking it down to sort of individual issues and coloring it and just sort of rehashing it and reduxing it to the story. So there'll probably be about 15 or so for Anubis as well. So at the moment, I guess I got about 20 or so comic books going out. Yeah.
That's cool. That is cool. So I guess the last thing I want to ask about Yuki versus before we get into Anubis a bit is were there any particular challenges that we say you faced when adapting the novel into an animation?
Yeah. Yeah, just like lots of things that I had no idea. Like it was a different beast altogether, animating than drawing. And so like the character models, you have to have character models that will be able to be, wired and rigged and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
so yeah. So the character models are different and certain jokes, like I was saying, they just don't translate into the visual like medium, the video medium, and vice versa. So some jokes have to go, and then you tweak them and stuff. And then I think one of my favorite parts is just sort of the spontaneity that you would get with the voice actors, where they would just say a line a certain way that I had not even imagined it, and it just was hilarious or something like that. Like just kind of unforeseen things where they bring in their own part of their own how they interpret the character and stuff. And so that kind of sometimes I'd be like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, okay, that you see that character that way, and maybe I'll you know go further with that or something like that. So yeah, it was kind of cool.
That is kind of cool. I mean, it's one of the process where you let the voice actors sort of flourish and let them do
Absolutely.
what they're good at doing. That's
Yeah.
cool. So when it comes to Anubis, I guess and I think you already talked about this a little bit already in terms of the ancient Egypt and what drew you into the dark supernaturals. It was a huge, sort of element in your younger years. I think everybody has sort of that, like,
Yep.
darker goth side of them at some
For
point.
sure.
I know I did. What would you say has been your most favorite part so far creating it?
Ooh, I just with Anubis particularly though, I love the fact that I can just sort of kind of get really like dark with my humor if I want to, and because that's my adult one, so I don't pull punches
Right.
too much or anything like that. I don't even think it's excessively like really gory or any adult or anything like that. But if I just feel like I do have the freedom to go there if I want to, and so that's kind of fun, just kind of, yeah, not having to have any restrictions or anything like that. You just can kind of let it go and wherever it takes you. If it's weird and morbid, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting about that, because you're the writer and the artists that you're working with are coming up with these illustrations and all that, how
Mhm.
do you approach collaborating with the artists to sort of capture the tone and vision of the story that you're trying to convey with that?
Yeah. It really has to be a good working relationship. You have to really just know you get a working relationship. I think you start to get a feel for how like they start to get a feel for how I write. I get to start a feel for how they interpret my words, and then sometimes I can just sort of mold the words to that artist, depending on who the artist is. So I might write Yuki versus Panda like in a different way sometimes than Anubis because I know I can explain something a certain way for that artist and they'll just know what I mean. Whereas the other one, maybe I have to be a little more clear or like
Right.
reference material and things like that. So yeah, reference material always helps too. Whenever I can, I always try to like explain what I'm doing and then maybe show them a little bit of like what I'm trying to hope for or something like that. So I think that helps a little bit too rather than they're not just like pulling out of the sky a little bit. At least they have something like to focus on. And okay, that's
Yeah.
what he's thinking.
No, that's cool. I mean, like, that's always been sort of something that I've even had to. I had to sort of, vision with other people when I've created my projects is how do you convey that message to somebody who has never seen it before? And like
That's it. It's in your head.
constantly,
Like,
yeah,
yeah.
it's
How do
always
you
in your
tell
head.
different? Yeah.
Yeah, and like I go back with a director who has who's working on a movie, and he's a friend of mine, and he has one vision on doing things, and then I'm sort of like this pseudo producer, kind of directing it, and I have a completely different vision of how I want to make
Okay.
that. So we're
Yeah.
constantly battling with each other. How do we get that done?
And in film, though, you're lucky because then you can both sit together with the editor and sort of both maybe come out, of the room finally with like some kind of project that you're all both happy with and whatever, like,
Exactly.
yeah.
So I mean, like, Duds and Dragons, I've only recently ran like I recently saw that on your portfolio as well, that it's like a fantasy and humor kind of like mixed into it.
Yeah. I like good
And
humor.
yeah, do you do you feel like there is a balance that you need to sort of strike to create that sort of unique experience for readers so they don't feel like they're getting one or too much of the other?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Yuki versus Panda is just I try and make it as funny and action oriented as I can while still, there's still a story and things like that. So there
Mhm.
has to be moments of, uh, sober clarity and things like that. But with the Duds and Dragons, the only thing that I really want to do with that thing is just make sure that it's, kid friendly. And so that's the only I have to make sure that the jokes aren't too over the heads of like or but not dumbed down either. I want it to be fun for everybody, like a Pixar movie. I think it
Yeah.
strikes a fine balance. Like it's perfect. Adults and kids can both enjoy them and things like that. So that's pretty much the only thing that I find really challenging with some of the other things. Yeah.
That's cool. That's definitely. And is this when you're creating like a this is like a board game, right? That people can buy right
Oh,
now and
Critter
pick up.
Force is the card game. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all based on the characters from my three different like universes, and it's just if you've ever played, I like board games in case you couldn't tell,
Oh, I can
it's
tell totally.
yeah, it's like a dice throne kind of Magic the Gathering mix with like just simple and fun. And my kids helped me sort of play test it and create it, and yeah, so anyone can play it. But it's just a lot of fun. I always wanted to make a game, and so I thought to take my characters and that way it can be something exclusively mine, not just kind of anybody's. Like they're
Yeah.
my characters. Yeah, so that's
And
kind of
they're
fun. Yeah.
characters from each of the worlds and universes and already created projects that you sort of just put together, basically.
Yeah, that's it. The three characters from each series, and each of the characters, I tried to make them play like their character. So Yuki's really fast and devastating. Panda's like really slow and like but like armored and like very heavy. And it's just in a battle, kind of a battle card dice game. And yeah, but I thought it was kind
That's
of neat
cool.
just to kind of bring it all together again, and you could explore the worlds a little further.
I mean, hey, I imagine like for something like this, because a lot of people have that inspiration, to make video games, and
Hmm.
you're sitting here making a board game. I mean, how does the budget for like this come along compared to say creating a video game if you so chose that route?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. If I did do a video game, and I've always wanted to do a video game, my kids are like really good at programming and stuff like that. I suck. I'm just gotta like look into it, like RPG Maker and these kind of game maker things. And you sort of, if you don't have programming skills, you can still make a game, kind of thing. Which they're amazing. You can,
Mhm.
but yeah, I would probably still get an artist, and that's where most of my like overhead is always like with the art, because I don't like to skimp, and I think art is like such a key
Yeah.
element to games and everything. Like I'll play a game or even buy a board game, even if I don't really like it that much, just sometimes because everything's just so beautiful. Like it's so beautiful, the art or whatever. So I think it can go a long way to making a project seem different, or just really stand out
Mhm.
art style. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, I like what you said about that. How do you go about vetting the artists? Like, where do you find these artists who are willing to work with you, and how does that collaboration kind of like spark?
Yeah, I've been using like deviant art and social media and just various sort of online forums. Sometimes I put a post out there and say,
Mhm.
look, this is what I'm trying to do, and if you're interested in this, send me a sample or something like that. And then I'll always get lots of responses. There's a lot of community in there, and the artist community, and I'll just kind of go through and sort of pick the ones that I think that would kind of mesh with the style, and then start narrowing it down from there and see what the if our rates and our timing and all those kind of things that we can come to some sort of like agreement on. And yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that is
it's
definitely a trip because you guys
it is.
because once you get involved an artist, it's no longer just like you having somebody commission somebody. It's now
Mhm.
effectively in a partnership, So
Yeah,
you guys will be putting something together. You might put it up on a shop, and then you guys talk about, well, are we going to split this? Are we going to split revenue this way? There's a lot of elements that go into it, and I
absolutely.
think I think what it comes down to from, hearing you speak about it is it comes down to really, networking and finding these places through media because I think if I think I remember you telling me when we met that you haven't even met some of the artists
None of
in
them.
person. That's a
None
that's
of
a
them.
trip.
Yeah, this is
Never
the
talked
age
on
we
a
live in.
call or anything either, or
No,
do you guys wow.
no,
It literally is just like almost like completely
silent.
unknown who they are. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. Seen random photos maybe on the line just because of social media sharing or whatever, just happenstance. But yeah, just emails and a lot of back and forth. And like I'm pretty hands on. The artists, by the time they're working on a book or whatever, I've decided that they're going to be the artist. I have a pretty good idea, I think. I'm hoping, anyways. And so yeah, they'll give me like the first copy. Like I'll give them the first draft. They'll give me the first draft. I'll make like notes. Sometimes I'll do little stick figures or whatever to show them
Yeah.
like, this is kind of what I meant. And then, but that gets less and less. Like I say, the more you work with them, they'll just start to like, they'll get your vibe and you get theirs. And like, it's just sort of, and ideally.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that I had a project I made with somebody who was kind of in that similar boat. Where at the time when we made the project, it was for like this Grand Theft Auto mod, and we had no idea
Oh,
how each other we didn't know each other, and we just bounced this idea up. Now
yeah.
we did eventually, communicate online and talk on Skype, but what's the trick with it is you're like thinking, dang, you don't even know what part of the world they're from.
Yeah.
Little behold, I find the guys from Lithuania. I'm like, "Oh, okay,
That's
cool."
amazing. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
so
so
cool.
it is a
Yeah, like
trip.
how else would you be hooking up with someone from Lithuania, right? Like, yeah.
Right.
So for all its negativity and stuff that the social media and all the online internet stuff gets, there's a lot of cool stuff as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
When it comes to, Critter Force, was there any sort of difficulty to ensure that the game appeals to both the casual and hardcore players, and how did you sort of made sure that it would do that?
Oh yeah, big time, man. I went through so many iterations of the game from like super simple to like it was overly complex and I just kept on grinding and grinding and playtesting and stuff until I found that like, if I could play it with my kids in about 20 minutes or so and they can do it without a problem and we're all having fun, like that's when I started realizing like, okay, this is
Yeah.
don't get too far from that. You don't want too many numbers floating in the air. You don't want too much math. You don't want too much of anything, but you also don't want it to just be super easy and like Candyland or whatever. So mix the crunch with a little bit of palatable, yeah. But yeah, so you just don't go overboard with the rules and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh, most definitely. Some of the other questions that I have on here, we literally covered like all most of them already, talking about how like approaching storytelling difference for comic versus animation.
yeah,
I feel like that's a huge thing. And I mean
so
like
different. Yeah.
I guess I guess here's another one that I feel really does sort of compel to me even as a reader, cuz I'll be honest, I have not read graphic novels or even dived in them to a long time. And
Okay.
I have a couple, so
Yeah.
I've been wanting to get back into that. And when I saw you at the booth, I'm like, this might be a good start. Get into some graphic novels and be like, okay, let's check it out.
Sweet.
Nothing like super complex or anything like that. And I think one of the things interesting is the making sure that the characters that you create in a story resonate with the audience. So,
Yeah.
what's your process for developing those type of characters?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say just for Yuki, I struggled writing like a girl, not because it was difficult, but I because I
Right.
wanted to do it justice. You know what I mean? Like I didn't want to do the guy version of a girl or whatever. So
Yeah.
I really like went into and I watched a lot of like just kind of movies and things like that where the girl where I felt they had like good strong female protagonists and stuff. And I just yeah, I finally found kind of Yuki's voice. So that was like a long time ago, but that was an interesting thing for me because yeah, I wanted to do her justice. Like Yuki and Panda, they're both the main characters. There's not one that's more important really than the other. So
Right.
Panda, I knew 100% he was a revenge story, easy peasy, like but Yukio was just sort of like, how would this girl react to all this stuff happening? And like, what is what's her goal? What's her demeanor and things like that. So that was interesting. And I felt I finally like nailed her. And I really feel like I have Yuki down pat now. But yeah, that's always interesting, I guess, sort of finding the character's voice and making it not your voice or what you
Yeah.
think people want to hear. Like
Mhm.
what's truest to the character, I think is really important. Yeah.
Right, and that's tough because you can take elements from your own personal experience,
Yeah.
but you also can't discount the fact that, the other personal experiences or, like your particular experience may not be
Exactly.
exactly what the character needs. So,
Yeah.
that's always been a trip.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you
And
just think about that, yeah.
would you say were there any like roadblocks or writer's blocks that you had at times when it comes to that, and how do you kind of overcome that?
Always, always, man. I
Right.
I've been slamming my head against the wall for the past like 2 weeks with the writer's block. I just had like a break yesterday, so that was really nice. I don't know what to do when you have that. I just try and maybe move on to like I'm
Right.
lucky I have 3 projects. So sometimes I'm just like, I'm just gonna put that on hold and maybe try and work on something else, get a little progress done on something else and then revisit it. And maybe in that time, you've been inspired by something or I try to always make notes every day of life or like any kind of thought that comes to my head and just like have a list of like just ideas and things. And like, 90% of them I'll never use probably, but it's just sometimes I go back and I'm looking, I'm like, oh yeah, that's perfect for that character or whatever. And then it'll take
Right.
me off again. Yeah. So sometimes just put it down and let your brain do something else for a little bit. That's my advice. That'll really help.
Yeah. Like the more that you force it, the less it'll come. I've
Yeah,
had writer's block for
sometimes.
so many times. It's like I've had writer's block for a project for probably 2 years now, and
Oh my God.
it's not even the fact that I don't know how to conclude it because the ending is already there. It's
Yeah.
just the
How do
middle
you
and
get
how do
it?
I lead up
Yeah.
to it? It's just like,
Oh
oh
yeah.
man, you got
I
so
know.
many
Well,
characters.
that's it, man. That's like you just stare at a blank page, especially when you're just starting something. You're like, where the heck do I, even start? But yeah, it's you got to go with whatever inspires you. Sometimes I just start with like a scene, like I'm inspired from like a scene or an idea, and I'll just write that down, and then you can build around that. Maybe
Yeah.
sometimes, like yeah, it depends on how you're inspired and how it comes to you for sure. That's what's great about it, though, man. There's not one way. There's never one way. It's not another 9 to 5 day at the office. Every day is little. How is inspiration going to strike you today, or hopefully it will, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So obviously, with you being heavy into comic book animations, you've definitely seen these industries evolve quite a bit. Where exactly do you think they're headed right now? And what particular experiences have you witnessed with all of it? Because there's just so much going on in the comic
It's
book space.
it's crazy. It's crazy. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but like AI, man, is just
Yeah.
like completely shifting the foundation of all creative work, like underneath us. And I just find myself saying, like, why am I even do it? If I could
Right.
just plug in a book, like I could just write 10,000 books on ChatGPT and try and make some money on Amazon or something.
Dude, I know, right?
It's so disheartening
It
and
is.
sometimes, but at the other times, the other days I'm just kind of like, no, I'm gonna just stay true and just do what I'm gonna do and screw it. If it doesn't make any money and I don't become, that's fine. I want to
Mhm.
do this and I want to tell that story. So yeah, it's very, very up in the air. I mean, AI is it's just here. It's here to stay.
Right.
It's just how it's going to be accepted, I guess, by people and how it's going to be integrated into um, everything. I don't know. Like I don't really use it that often. I like to talk with it. I like technology and stuff, but
Yeah.
like I don't use it in any of my work unless I'm trying to describe something to an artist and I'm like, here, this is, I type it into ChatGPT and it'll generate an image and I'm like, something, here's what the stupid robot thinks I'm talking about, but like,
Yeah.
you take this and make it good kind of thing.
Right.
But yeah, I'll always use real artists. I'll never be using like that kind of stuff. Like it's just,
Mhm.
so it's
I've
crazy.
always yeah, I mean, like, and it's tough because we're at a point where at what point do you let it, like, adapt with it without it fully taking over the creative area? I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
I'm a, like, I'm definitely forefront when it comes to AI, even as an editor, and
Yeah.
it's saved me so much time and
Yeah. There's no
process.
denying. Yeah.
So, even when creating my podcast and, you know, coming up with certain things, although some of the questions I use openly admit are AI generated questions because it just scrapes everything off the internet.
Oh
But then
yeah.
at some point, do I say, well, is it really authentic? Is it lazy? You start battling with yourself. And I
Yeah.
think when it comes to that particular type of deal, it shouldn't be something that fully replaces the work of an artist, but I think if it can enhance the work of an artist, then you're on the right path. But it's so
Yeah.
hard when these tools are known to scrape real life work off of, you know.
Yeah.
So you're like, well,
That's the key. Yeah. If we can find some kind of way of just kind of integrating it into subtly into our lives. Like the one of my greatest examples, I just use like the Copilot instead of searching Google now. I'll just
Mhm.
ask my question to like Copilot AI, and it'll search the results and give me the results. So there's an example of it just really making things a lot more efficient rather than me scouring websites and trying to copy and paste and things like that. So it's, of course, you don't know if the information is always true. So important things you
Exactly.
gotta you gotta look it up. But yeah, definitely convenient for that kind of stuff, like for research and for little things like, hey, what's another word for, this or whatever, like for my writing styles and stuff that helps sometimes. So, but yeah,
Awesome,
definitely good.
awesome. Are there any sort type of advice or any type of advice that you would give to writers, artists, or looking to sort of break in this field? I know we don't talk too much about like the money side of things,
Yeah,
but money is definitely a huge part if you're not working 9 to 5. How do you like I think there's just so much information out there that a writer who wants to break an industry is like, how do I get started?
I
And yeah.
I wish I had better.
Right,
Can
right.
you tell me? Because I want to know too. No, it's like
Yeah.
it's just like I just do my best, and that sounds so stupid, but I just kind of like I just do as much as I can. I try and get out there, and but never like I don't want to like feel like I'm like a dancing monkey, and like selling my soul or anything like that. So it's like a fine line where you gotta self promote and have confidence and things like that and get out there, but also you don't want to have like ego, and you also don't want to like make yourself unwelcome or like oversaturate things as well. So it's a bit of a balance, but definitely, like I was saying, get out there and go to cons and talk to people face to face, because I always find that that's so enlightening. Like for me, like that we're doing this now because
Right.
of this, like it's like a third degree of separation kind of thing. Like it happens. Like a friend of a friend will see you or know this. And yeah, it's just sometimes it'll come from the places that you least expected, but
Yeah.
would never have come if you hadn't been there in the first place.
Oh yeah, 100%. I
Yeah.
mean, and I think that's tough because on social media, you don't really get the full picture just looking at someone's profile. A lot of
Mm,
times, this is gonna sound kind of like, a little cheesy, but also, a little mischievous what I'm about to say. But when you're in person, nobody can't just block you on social media or block your DMs or ignore it. If you ask them
yeah.
a question, there's that genuine human connection that you get
Yeah.
from that you don't get on social media.
Yeah.
And I
100%.
always think that's a trip because, and yeah, I agree. I mean, as for writers looking to break in the industry and even editors, it's really just, build that portfolio and network.
Hmm.
I can't think of any other things that have worked the best.
No, I wish I had the like a be all, the one button, like I win button kind of thing answer. But yeah, it's just
Right.
for me, it definitely has not been. The success has sort of been, yeah, all over the
Mhm.
place. Like just keep
For
on
sure, for
going,
sure.
and yeah. I think though, if I can say, like, if you're worried that you're not being genuine, like with your art and things like that, and you're worried like you might have like imposter syndrome or anything like that, I think that's a good sign that you're probably not those things. Because I don't
Interesting.
Yeah, because I don't think people who are like imposters or who are fake worry about that kind of stuff, like if they're being genuine, just by the very nature of them, just being imposters or whatever. I'm not talking about anyone specifically, but just in general. I can't say that I really met anybody that's like that. Most of the people I meet are really, really like they're in it because they love it.
Right.
Yeah, but yeah, it's interesting.
No, that is a really interesting point that I haven't even really thought of because, I think a lot of people just psych themselves up thinking, oh, I'm not in this. But then, like most people that worry about being perfectionists are generally
Yeah,
perfectionists for a good reason, even
yeah,
if they hate that process.
because you care about your art, and that makes you genuine, and that means you're
Mhm.
not an imposter. That's the thing for sure.
That is absolutely key. So when it comes to Dusk Media or Dusk Leaf Media, which is I already kind of like that name, Dusk Leaf. How did you come up with a name like Duskleaf?
I wanted something kind of mysterious, and
Okay.
also sort of to just sort of represent my Canadian kind of background and stuff like that. So the maple leaf and dusk is a very mysterious kind of time, and yeah, I just kind of I workshop a whole bunch of stuff, and that always just came back to I kind of like dusk leaf. There wasn't a lot of we also have to make sure nothing else is kind of named that or anything. So
Right.
yeah, it worked out. It worked out.
Huh. That is a trip. Are there any so just to kind of spill the beans, are you any working on any sort of exciting upcoming projects or ideas that are completely new and not related to what you've
Ooh.
already talked about?
Oh, I can't wait. I have a
Oh.
couple of things, but I feel like three series I should finish. I should finish one before I move on. But like, yeah, I have a couple story ideas that I've been having in my head for like over a decade, and really want to explore them. But
Mhm.
I feel like I've got to shut the oven off on another project first and make sure that's fully baked before I start, mixing eggs and stuff like that in the kitchen and making a new project, because that the allure of the new project is always so very strong. He's like, oh, new, like I'll put that one aside. That's too much hard work right now. This is all new. It's like I can do anything, no wrong. But yeah, it's so next year, yeah, I might be sort of announcing a new project because I feel like I want to maybe expand something. I really want to get into I had an idea for an optical illusion book,
Ooh.
and I don't want to give too many details, but I thought it'd
Yeah.
be kind of cool. But how you tell the story um, depends on how you're looking at the book, kind of thing. So yeah, something just totally out there, kind of artsy, but still within the genre of comic books or graphic art.
Right.
Yeah.
I would definitely say, like, the other thing that I've been getting into, and I wanted to ask, have you ever thought about doing it, is creating some more like audiobooks and audio
Mm,
experiences. Because I
yes.
just ran across an audio book and a series that I had no idea started from an audio project, and then it moved on to say like an Amazon Prime video. But it
Oh
was this
wow.
one called by Markiplier called Edge of Sleep,
Okay.
and it's a full on like anime. It's like a full on like
Wow.
radio show.
Oh, Edge of Sleep. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I watched like the full 6 episodes on Amazon Prime, binged through that in a whole day.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's such a trippy story because
So cool.
it's legit like one of the fears that I've always had. Is like, "Oh, gee, you fall asleep, you're gonna die." I just like, "Oh, man."
Yeah.
But yeah, nah, he turned that into but what was kind of inspiring is he turned that from, like, an actual audio book, and
Yeah.
he's not the only one in the process of, working this, but they had a whole radio style show. It was like if you just took a Netflix show, but instead
Yeah.
of focusing on the visuals, you
Yeah.
made sure it was all audio. I forgot
Like
the
the old
company
school
that did
radio
it.
plays. Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot the
Yeah.
company that did it, but they're pretty I was, like, super inspired after listening to that. I'm just like,
That's so cool.
"This is such a trip."
And like the
S
panels, like the comics are doing that now too. Like the audio panels, it's like each panel you flip to and you get the audio of the
Yeah,
actors and stuff. It's like
I
interesting.
didn't even think about that.
Yeah. They're
Huh.
doing that over. Yeah. Comixology is kind of doing stuff like
I'd
that.
have to look into that. That's the first I've
Yeah.
heard of it.
Yeah.
Huh,
It's kind
so
of
it's like
neat.
you read the book and it has audio on it?
Yeah. It's like you're hearing it. And again, but you're looking at the visuals, but you're hearing the story as well.
That'd
Yeah.
be a trip.
Kind of neat. Yeah. But again, you have to
That
have
is
voice actors and everything. So yeah.
right, right.
I'm sure it can stand alone on its own, probably, but it's kind of neat when you
Yeah.
marry the two.
Did definitely. So I guess like to kind of get ready to close this show off because we've been talking for 45 minutes and it just went by like
Jeez.
fast.
Yeah,
I'm
it
like,
did. Wow.
my goodness, I'm gonna have to add and edit some parts, but basically to sort of add in reflection and closing thoughts, what would you say has been the most valuable lesson that you've learned as a writer and a creator?
Ooh, geez. I've learned so many as a valuable. Again, I don't underestimate just the power of persistence. I think because like if you don't believe in your ideas, how can you expect anybody else to really? So I
Hmm.
think you have to be like your biggest fan and your biggest critic, and I think that'll serve you well to try and to sort of find that balance of being true to what you're trying to do, and also making something that could be like marketable or palatable for an
Hmm.
audience and things like that. So yeah, but persistence is definitely the key, and just getting out there and finding meet good people, like just hook up with good people, people that elevate you or that you can learn from, or things like that, like that you like their presence, or you like, who you are around them, and or what they're talking about, or things like that. So I think that's important, who you surround yourself with, for sure.
Nice, nice. Are there sort of any impact you kind of hope that the stories are going to leave on readers and viewers by any chance?
Yeah, always, like, not to get too into like dissecting the projects because I love
Right,
people to figure that out. But
right.
yeah, I mean, Anubis Prophecy, Yuki, and Duds, they all have their own themes that I sort of hope are sort of like, I don't hammer people over the head with them or anything like that. It's just sort of like there's a subtext in there, like
Hmm.
the underdog for Duds and Dragons, for instance, or whatever, or being discriminated against because you're like not this, you're not strong enough or this
Yeah.
enough or whatever. So yeah, those kind of things. Like, so anything sort of human issues, I think, but they're not at the fore. Hopefully, they're not at the forefront where you're like thinking you're getting like preached to or anything like that. Like, it's very just subtle, and it's more just like that goes along with the story, I think, more than anything. Yeah.
Hmm. Well, it has been amazing talking with you.
Yeah, you as well. Thank you.
I've definitely learned a lot. Where can we find you and sort of support your work? That way we can kind of get everything, the plugs, everything out of the
Yeah,
way.
love the plugs.
I love the
Well,
plugs.
just online, duskleaf.com. All that's my major like hub. All my stuff is there. But like Yuki versus Panda and stuff, you can get that in bookstores. That was widely distributed for the first two volumes, anyways. I'm working on getting the other ones. But
Hmm.
yeah, Comixology, Amazon, Drive Through Comics, anywhere you can get comic books, really. And yeah, and I'm trying to get Critter Force. That should be on Amazon as well and online. It's also on my shop as well. So that's the
Oh,
plugs.
awesome, dude! No,
Yeah.
that's great. I mean, it was great meeting you. I met you along with some other interesting people over at the Fan Expo. The other one I met was James Curry, who does the hosting for the creature features
Oh,
since like 2008.
that
And
sounds fun.
it's a trip because I'm hoping to kind of get him on the show as well, because it's just
Yeah.
like I'm into horror movies,
Yeah.
Thriller's always been my main go, and that's why like
Okay.
I picked up Anubis. It's like, okay,
Okay.
I can rock with horror. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely. But cool,
Yeah.
cool. You've been listening to the Creative Corner Insights. I'm your host, Double Polson. We were speaking today with Graham Misiurak, who is a writer and creator in the comic book space, animated series, and even game design. If you're interested in checking any of his work out, I'm going to leave links in the description below. Once again, thank you for listening or watching this podcast, and we will catch you guys next time.
Thank
Goodbye.
you.
Yeah, thank you.